everybody. Welcome to another installment of Farm Fresh Fabrication, where I do things my way, whether it's right or wrong or somewhere in between. So, I bring Maxine home. I'm broke. Didn't have a job that was paying me very well at that time. And so the car sat for about, I think, 2 or 3 years. And anyways, where I had it sitting was in the backyard, and it was kind of right underneath this street lamp. And I loved how the thing looked at night. It just looked so mean and everything, how it was. And so the more that I sat and looked at it, I was like, God, this thing would just be so cool with like a 12-valve Cummins in it. And so that was just one of my hairpinned ideas that I was thinking of. And then when I very first brought it home, the original plan for it was restoration. I love the movie Christine, and if you look up 58 Plymouth, like, there are a ton of Christine copies out there because the cars look great. They're cool looking cars. When you go to try to restore one, nobody makes aftermarket parts for them. Nobody makes aftermarket panels. Nobody makes anything for them. So the only way to restore them is there's 2 ways. You either get a bunch of cars, take all the parts off of them that you can, and make one good car. It's alive! Or you have somebody custom make every single panel. And if you aren't a body guy, I'm not a body guy, that gets real expensive real fast for somebody to custom make stuff for it. That plan kind of went out the window. And then the more that I looked at the car, the more that I just loved how unique it was and how different it was, and all Bob's ideas that he had on it. So I had a idea that I was like, you know what? It's already dually. It's already got a manual transmission in it, even though there was 2. It's already had some weird stuff done to it, so why not take Bob's stuff and just go to the moon with it? Then I found a buddy of mine that had a first-gen Dodge. It was gas, so it wasn't quite a quick, easy swap, but yanked all the body off, sold everything that I could off of it, and then went to put Maxine's body on for the first time, and I noticed that the rear axle was completely shot. All the gears inside it were just mangled. It had sheared off all of the studs on one of the end caps on it, and so that whole axle was just garbage. So I checked on Marketplace, and I found a guy by the name of Jeremy, and lo and behold, it's Jeremy from Shade Tree Vintage Auto.
So I'm Jeremy. I've been doing this since I was like 14 years old.
Before he had worked there, and so I just met up with him by chance recently, and we had already done business in the past, so it's kind of funny to go for full circle on this stuff. Bought a rear end from him, replaced that one, had to replace the rear spring pack because it was completely cracked and sheared through about half of the springs. So I don't know what happened to that truck. It wasn't good, and there was no body damage on it, so I'm not sure if it locked up going down the freeway or what happened, but it destroyed a lot of parts. So I changed out that. The front end, the brake calipers were rusted shut, so had to replace those. Had to replace the rotors. In order to get Maxine to make the wheel wells and everything line up with the first gen chassis, I had to take 8 inches out of the frame, but I did a Z-cut in it, took out 8 inches, put the frame together, welded it, fish plated it. And then the number one thing that I absolutely hate when you see people that do body swaps with 4x4s is just how much frame that you see. And a lot of these, like, they don't try to hide it at all, that you can see daylight all the way through. Like, I hated it when that happened. So I wanted to do the best that I could to try to reduce that, even if you could still see some. So the cross members on the first gen, all of them like ticked up and then across and then back down. So I redid all the cross members so that none of them did that anymore. I also made sure to go through anywhere where you could see daylight, and I flattened it out with steel so that you couldn't see all the way through it. Then I mounted everything using a body bushing mount kit for like a 70s Chevelle, because that was the kit that I could find that had the most body mounts to it. So that way I had the most support for the body to hold it together. And then I also made sure that my wheels fit like identical, because I always hated it too when it was like half an inch back or half an inch forward. So that took a little bit of work and everything, because I actually had to put weight on the suspension and push it down to see if the axle shifted forward or anything, because I wanted it to look centered at ride height with the right weight. So do all that work, get all that point. Well, I pull the seats out and I start looking at how I'm going to mount everything, and I just start seeing these oddly shaped panels everywhere. So what he had done is anytime that there was a hole, he would grab any piece of metal that he had laying around and he would just screw that thing to the ground. So I start pulling all those screws out, and there must have been 10 panels that were in there of all different shapes and sizes. And by the time I was done, like the entire floor was just Swiss cheese. So I start cutting out everything that I can't weld to, that's not structurally sound anymore. And by the time I was done cutting, all that I had left was the door jamb pillars and the center tunnel for the transmission, and everything else to the back seat was gone because it was just so bad. So then I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I got to start redoing in the floor. And if I've already got to redo the entire floor, I looked at everything and I was like, well, now I can tuck more frame. So I moved the floor up about 2.5, 3 inches so that I could hide more frame. And in doing that, that means that I had to shorten all of my seat brackets, because I'm a pretty tall guy and it was already pretty tight with me just in the normal floor. So I shortened all the seat brackets, and in doing so, found out that when that old foam that's in seats kind of turns into a little powder, when you weld on a seat bracket, that is extremely flammable. My driver's side seat went up in flames, burned all the center out of it, looked like I had a horrible night at Taco Bell. The neighbors were across the street having a party, and I had a 4-foot flame coming out of a seat right in the center of my driveway. All of them were like eyes like this big, and I'm just sitting there laughing as I walk over and get the hose and spray it out. So had to get the seats all completely reupholstered and redone. Had all of the door panels had to be completely remade, because most of them were missing or ripped 3/4 of the way through. The weird cardboard backing stuff was all gone or rotted or curved or whatever. So I had all new door panels, front seats, rear seat, and the speaker area. Oh, and the visors were all redone by a company that was about 2 hours away from me. Did a phenomenal job. Then I put in stereo, speakers, all that stuff. So that kind of completes the interior. Oh, the windshield. So the windshield that I had was spidered in like 12 different ways. So it actually took me ordering the windshield 3 times in order to get it the right one. The first one showed up and it was completely wrong. They tried to blame it on me, saying that my car wasn't actually a 58, which it was. So they fought me tooth and nail on that. But at the end of the day, I needed a windshield, and there wasn't many people that made those anymore. So ordered another one, which showed up broke. Then had to order another one again. Luckily, I got the insurance on that second one so that I didn't have to pay for it. Ordered another one. This one showed up in good condition. And I had to beg and plead all the glass places around, because first of all, none of them could find it. None of them wanted to order it for me. So that's why I ordered it. And then none of them like the wraparound windshields because they are a nightmare to put in. So I finally like sweet talked my way into having one of the local companies put in the glass. And I told him, I said, you put in the glass, I'll come help. I'll do whatever you need me to do in order to help this make it easier for you. So he agreed. And it took us something like 3 hours, and it ended up that he had to be there, I had to be there, and I called my wife, and we had like 4 suction cups on that thing pulling all at the same time as he went through with that tool to flip over the lip over it, and it finally just suction cup and sucked in. But it took almost 3 hours to put that dang thing in. So if you see now, I put too much weight on the roof rack at one point and cracked the windshield down it, and that crack will stay there until I can't see out that windshield anymore because it is just a freaking nightmare to put those in. So that completed the interior, which takes us to the drivetrain. So first gen Dodge had the 440, 727 that I believe it was an NP205, but this one was full-time four-wheel drive because my four-wheel drive shifter only had high and low. So it was always in four-wheel drive, which made for really sad donuts in the winter because cut to that donut. Anyways, so the motor that was originally in it, I pulled the intake just to give a look-see over the thing, and the internals of it look like I pulled that thing out of the Titanic. Like there was just rust flake everywhere inside of it. If it wasn't rusted in place, it was pitted. So that motor, yes, somebody could have saved it, but not this guy, because I don't care. If it's that much work, I'm not going to do it. So I have several motors laying around, so I grabbed one of my other motorhome 440s that I knew was good, pulled that one off. Everything looked great. Put that in. But when I pulled that old motor out, the first one, the torque converter out of the transmission fell off. And thank God it did, because when it happened, it tipped upside down, and normally you're supposed to have a bunch of, transmission fluid come shooting out, some oil, water, nothing but water came out of that thing. So
Do not, my friends, become addicted to water.
I knew that the insides probably had water everywhere, and no matter how much I tried to clean it, it was going to end up probably turning into a milkshake. So pulled that transmission, put in another one that had been sitting around, but I knew kind of its history, so I knew it'd be okay. So I threw that transmission in, threw that motor in, ordered a whole bunch of parts. Had to get truck headers, had to cut the frame in order to make those truck headers work. The starter had to be a mini starter in order to fit in the compartment that I had it in. I ripped out the factory power brakes, which it did actually have power brakes. That car was one of the earlier, that was kind of their luxury sell, it had power steering and power brakes. But their power brakes was like this big bellows looking thing, kind of like an accordion. So pulled that, and of course I'm broke, so I'm doing this on a budget. I did have a power brake assembly from a square body Blazer. Don't know exactly the year. Made that work. Everything worked great on it. The carburetor I had was an Edelbrock, and I paid way too much money to have a radiator shop go through the factory radiator and fix all the leaks and blah 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 blah. So get all that put together, get all the front end hung, get everything going, and I'm building this thing in my gravel driveway in the middle of the winter And I'm going out there in like bibs and doing all this while it's close to zero, sometimes sub-zero, just trying to get this car knocked out so I can go enjoy it. And the day that I go to try to start it, it's so cold the dang thing doesn't want to crank. So I took it to an undisclosed location, which definitely was not my current work, because they would have frowned on that, and that's a big no-no. So I definitely didn't do that. But take it to this warm warehouse and get it started and get the timing somewhat adjusted, get the fuel and everything somewhat adjusted, bring it home, go to take it for its first test drive, and it is the goofiest looking thing because I've got two dually wheels on one side, only one on the other, because that's all that the first gen that I picked up came with. And you can see daylight through the rear wheel wells. Like, the thing sounded amazing though. Like, it did sound good. And first test drive was just around the block. Everything went flawlessly. So then we have to move on to wheels and tires. The only wheels that I could find that could handle the size of wheels and tires that I wanted without spacers, so the correct back spacing and everything. So there's two types of wheels that'll fit without doing wheel spacers or anything like that, due to the offset and the back spacing and all that for the size of tires that I was going to do. The fuel wheels though, I've always liked the cleavers, but you have to put them on the right type of vehicle, otherwise they kind of turn out looking a little toolboxy. So I gambled on it, and I found a website that had some sort of goof of some sort, and they were $1,500 cheaper than literally any other website. So ordered them, and it took almost 3 months in order for them to show up. But once they did, and I bolted them on, like, that totally made the look of the car to me. So she's a mixture of Mad Max and John Carpenter's Christine, for those of you who are older than dirt.
Because how do you kill something that can't possibly be alive?
She is dually, 55-gallon drums, cut in half for fenders. No, I did not do this. The previous owner did. You can tell. And for everyone saying, how could I do this to a two-door? There's literally not a panel that's not rusted out, or I had to replace, or the previous owner had done something to. So why restore when you can make something like this? Running 410 gears with a Dodge 440 and a 727 trans, and she is my baby. And now let's get to the fun stuff. I take this baby to the Utah Gambler 500 meets because she is fun. And here is the motorhome 440. Churched it up a little bit, went full Joe Dierte on her. I had to change the gas pedal setup because the 58s used a linkage that went up the firewall, and with the 440 in there, it would not have enough room for the linkage to go through. So this gas pedal actually is from my mom's 1971 Charger that we grew up with. It rotted out from the Utah salt from her driving it literally every day, and so we do have her another Charger now, but we had to scrap that one. And this one I took that out of that car just as kind of a, you know, reminder of how I got into cars, and, you know, is kind of an homage to my mom. Here's another reason of why it's a shit box. So I came home one day and I could hear this noise, and my batteries were all dead because the contacts in here had my horn honking, I guess, for almost 5 hours straight in the summer because it got hot and the contacts hit. So tried to fix it a couple times. It kept reverting back to just randomly honking. So now that is where the horn's at. It's right there. That's another reason of why I didn't feel bad doing what I did to this car, is because everything had issues with it. So, but she's getting prettier every freaking day. So, speaker there, 2 speakers there, 1 on each side, gotta have that. Luggage rack is a Tiger rack, T-Y-G-E-R. This is the side that's supposed to face the front of the car, but I didn't like how that looked, so I turned it sideways because it's wider that way. And that is how she attaches, just the drip rails right there. Then these fine 55-gallon drum fender flares are just absolutely gorgeous. They look so good. Yes, I know, ugly mud flaps, I don't like them either, but Highway Patrol would not leave me alone. Witness. And so I had to put that in. Anyways, so here's their locking system, and here's all my stuff from going off-roading and gambling. But let me get my light out so you can see. So here is my 5th wheel hitch. No, it's not for looks. It legitimately is a 5th wheel hitch. So if we go underneath, right here, that's my big beefy bumper I had to make with the drop hitch so that I could tie everything together. Right here is huge plates that I had to make to attach the frame to the lifted section so that I could have that plate. The plate is a 1/2 inch thick steel plate. Here's one of the body mounts right there, in case you guys were wondering. There's a huge ass rust hole there. Most of this has been replaced. New exhaust, dual exhaust, all that fun stuff. But this is now 2 1/4-inch plates squishing the factory frame that I boxed in so that everything was stronger, and then put the 5th wheel plate that was 1/2 inch steel, 1/2 inch thick plate steel up top. So, oh, so much rust. Oh, it's so good. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that's made it to this point, because that meant that, like, must have been entertaining of some sort. But I know that this video was a lot of pictures and a lot of talking, but honestly, Maxine's my baby. That's been a dream car of mine, a 58 Plymouth, since I was little, since I first saw the movie Christine. And so I was finally able to get my own. She was rough, but she was my dream car and she was mine. And so I didn't have a lot of money, so I did what I could with her. But I mean, what would you guys have done? But I really appreciate all of you that have made it to this point, and for the support that you guys give me and everything. I promise though, it gets better. Stick around, because the next video that we're gonna be doing is when I switch Maxine over from the diesel, or from the gas to the diesel, which means I frame swap it again for better suspension, different drivetrain and everything, and the 12 valve swap, which is really where Maxine kind of comes into her own and becomes Maxine, the car that I've been dreaming of and that I absolutely love. Also, current situation on Maxine. So the motor is being rebuilt as well as the transmission by my buddy Brock. So if you want to look him up on Instagram, he is Brock5250. Absolutely a stud, does an amazing job. But that's being rebuilt right now. I'm fixing a bunch of the minor stuff that I've been putting off for the last 2 builds that I actually need to just get done. So any of you that have actually built cars know that there's like the things that when you get down to the nitty gritty that you're like, someday I'll fix. Today and the near future is that someday, because I got to quit putting that off because they're not only annoying, but they're starting to bother me really bad now. So I'm fixing a bunch of the small stuff. I'll show it to you guys in the near future, but for now, stick around, watch as we switch from gas to diesel, and also just thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you investing your time and taking the time out of your day in order to watch this with me just being silly and ridiculous with my cars. So appreciate it, and until next time, and we'll see you again. Thanks, guys.
Was that as good for you as it was for me?